Hi guys, so I'm Morgan and I'm doing my presentation on hair, makeup, and fashion for women during the Victorian era. And so basically it all comes down to the grooming and how they presented themselves back then. I chose this topic because I found it very interesting and I can relate with it better. And um, I've always just been very interested in how people conducted themselves in different eras and the meanings behind it and why they did it. And so I'm glad I chose this, and it was really interesting finding out um, why they did what they did, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. But so I'll go ahead and get started. So first up, fashion. So you can see women were wearing very long dresses. They weren't very cool by any means, like temperature wise. They're probably very hot. And they're very poofy from the waist out, and then sometimes on the arms. You can kind of see in the 1850s and 1870s, they have poofier arms, especially 1825. And I like this picture because it shows how it changes subtly throughout the era. But I really like this, and um, it wasn't the most practical type of dress by any means. Um, but they did modify it later on as the era went on. Um, so they're always very put together. Um, they always had plenty of layers. They're very conscientious about what they're wearing, and they put a lot of thought into it. And um, they also wore a lot of hats then, and so it was very rare that a woman would leave the house without one because they were so popular. And the bigger, the better, the more out there, the better. And especially women of high class, they had the bigger, sillier hats on. And it was nice too because it protected them from the sun, so that wasn't just a fashion statement. Um, they were very conservative. Um, as you can kind of see, they didn't show very much skin, and they actually covered more skin than they did during the Romantic era, and that's because, um, women were seen to be examples, with purity um, and they're expected basically to be perfect and to be the morally correct one in society, and so a lot of people were looking up to them, and so they had to show it too and how they dressed. So that's why they were more conservative in that way. Um, Also, the good thing about it though is women could start wearing boots back then, and like that's huge. I love boots, so I'm happy for that. But yeah, they could wear boots more, especially since women started working more. They needed to be able to move around a bit, so they could start wearing boots. And at first it was only people of higher class that could wear them, but it became more popular. And that said, they still had to wear corsets, so I'm not sure how comfortable it really was. But it reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean with Elizabeth. But anyways, this is very interesting to learn about that. So here's the makeup part. So this one was a lot of fun learning about. So they always kept their makeup very light, and as you can see, she doesn't have very much on. Um, it was actually looked down upon to wear makeup to where it was very obvious because only prostitutes did that, and so you're basically labeling yourself that way if you did wear a lot. And so typically, what was common was they would put lipstick on, and they would use beet juice, or I'm trying to think, the other one just went out of my head. Um, Anyways, maybe I'll remember later, but, yeah, so they would put that on their lips and just barely so you could barely tell, and then they would pinch their cheeks, which doesn't sound very comfortable, but just to add a little bit more color, and, that's basically all they did. They plucked their eyebrows a little bit, but that's it. Um, it was very, um well, it was considered very beautiful to have pale skin, and that was definitely the, trend back then. And in fact, some women wore eyeshadow a little bit to contour their, face a little bit so that paleness stood out more, but they used lead, which does not sound safe to me at all since it can go into your skin. But, I mean, they probably didn't know that back then or else they wouldn't have used it, but, they tried whatever means they could to look as presentable so that they could be courted soon since that was one of their main priorities that they were aiming for, so it's very interesting um, how it all plays into part, but, anyways, it does sound kind of painful. I'm glad we don't do some of that now, but, yeah, I found that was very interesting. So this is hair. This is my hair. So I decided to try out some of the hairstyles that they did back then. Don't judge too harshly. I'm not a huge hair person. I'm not the best at it, but I tried. Um, so this is usually worn by younger girls, the one I'm showing right now. And I had a lot of fun doing this. My hair is very difficult to work with, but I'm happy with how it turned out. So basically all it is you do 2 braids and then you tie the 2 together with like a hair tie and then you can put a bow on it or whatever else you have. So braids were very common back then. They also did a lot of buns. So um kind of a background on it. So hair back then was considered like the glory feature. It was um the epitome of beauty back then, much like how women wanted pale skin, and except even more so. And, they had insanely long hair. I mean, it was common to have it to your ankles, to your knees, and that's so long. Like, I can't imagine how heavy that would be. But they hardly ever cut it unless they were ill and it was as the last resort or some people who were poor had to or they didn't have to but they decided to cut their hair off because it actually sold really well and so they could get money that way and it kind of reminds me of Little Women, when Joe cuts her hair off for her family. So that it was a sacrifice, especially back then. I mean, that's one of the few things they had. So anyways, I thought that was kind of cool. They also wanted it as thick as possible, and they wanted it smooth and shiny and clean. And the weird thing too, I didn't know this, but with thick hair, they would add other people's hair to it, so it's kind of like hair extensions now that we have, but they would do that just to add more volume. And um, I mean, it was a lot of work that they put into it. And the other thing is that women um, had to oh, let me repeat that. So most of the time growing up, girls could wear their hair down until they reached about age 15. And then that was kind of like a coming of age year. So like they had to start putting their hair up because otherwise it was considered too intimate. And I'll get more into that in the next slide. Um, this before I get back to that, here is another hair um, technique that I tried. It didn't work out as well. You can barely see it, but it's a braided bun on the bottom, and um, they also always had their hair parted down the middle. That was very much the fashion, and they wanted it as neat as possible. So probably not as much hair in the middle like I have, but anyways, back to what I was saying. Um, so yeah, they had to start wearing their hair up at 15 years of age, and that's because when they wore it down, it was considered very intimate, and the only people who typically saw them with their hair down was, when they're alone or changing or when they're married, like with their husbands. They can see it with their hair down, but that's about it. And like for plays, when people would put on plays, they would have intimate scenes shown with all the women having their hair down. I mean, it was a huge symbol of that sensuality, and so I thought that was very interesting. And it doesn't sound very comfortable either. I mean, that's a lot of hair I'm talking about. But anyways, another thing that was interesting is they hardly washed it. And I'm running out of time, so I'll have to hurry, but they hardly washed it. And and it took a lot of work. I mean, that's why, but still like they would go probably a week or two without washing it and just kind of do the bare minimum. And some people hired hairstylists to do it for them because it took so much work. And they would keep that same hairstyle and sleep in it for days on end and for weeks because it was too much work taking it all down and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. And they would wear flowers in their hair and pins and stuff. That was the fashion. I'm gonna show you the rest. So this is kind of embarrassing. I look like a deer, but what I was trying to do is do the overlapping braid that makes it look like a crown, but it didn't quite work out. So they said to put flowers on top of your hair, and I didn't have that many, so I had the next best thing, which was leaves. Anyways, hey, so this is my last slide, and my last picture is of a top knot bun, and a lot of women wore it to balls and stuff. But anyways, I just want to leave off that, a lot of even the simplest um, customs had a lot of meaning, and it was very fun learning about that. I know I said that a lot, but I mean it. Um, and I hope you guys liked it. But thanks, bye. Oh, I forgot. This is my works cited, so I just wanted to say that real fast.